Having heard from all of the candidates, we will now move into holding the Board of Trustees candidate forum. So in the candidate forum, we have brought online the candidates, and there's a list of questions that we have. The list of questions are the ones that were submitted by the community, and these questions were then sorted by the poll done of the community of which ones are most relevant. And so I'm going to go through for each questions, and I'm going to ask each of the candidates to comment on their views on that question. So the first question is, should ARIN's basic fee structure remain as is, or do you feel that there are changes needed? If so, what changes? I'll take Dan Alexander on the first question.
Oh, morning. I think, like a whole lot of things internet related, the current assumptions or the current situation is very different from the previous assumptions that we were working on, and the fee schedule is no different. You know, ARIN used to only allocate blocks to ISPs, and I actually remember being on the AC back when we were debating on allowing end users to get their own blocks. But now we have end users who can, you know, get a /8 and pay ARIN $150 a year, while a small ISP pays $1,000 for a 20. So we always need to revisit and look towards an equitable distribution of costs, probably weighted towards those who benefit most. But aside from that, I think the top priority is to fix the fee schedule for V6 with respect to small providers, because with the small providers, you shouldn't have to be bumped to a higher fee schedule just in order to get an appropriately sized IPv6 block. IPv6 should have a zero cost burden over V4, and that should be the top priority in promoting 6. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll now move to the second panelist. Actually, I see Nancy Carr. I see Tina's ready, so I'll move to Tina. Tina, on the same question of should ARIN's basic fee structure remain as is, or do you feel there are changes needed? If so, what changes?
I do support a review of the fee structure. Currently, we have policy changes in development to support those extra small ISPs that are trying to adopt V6. Fees should never be a barrier to the adoption of V6. We need to look at that. I do not support changing policy because fee structure is flawed. You know, we know more now, we should do better. Also, we need to look at how our fee structure increments and how we notify people when those increments are coming. In experience in my organization, we recently crossed the barrier where our fee structure doubled. That was a bit of shock to our finance department that plans 2 years out for ARIN fees. The way that's communicated needs to be revisited as well. Also, I don't support increasing fees without increasing what the members receive for those fees. I think we should really reevaluate that. While we need to support the organization, we need to be careful with fees. Thank you.
Very good. And then same question, should ARIN's basic fee structure remain as is, or do you feel there are changes needed? If so, what changes? And I'll now turn it to Nancy Carter.
Thanks, John. So the Board of Trustees is responsible, as you know, for fiscal oversight. As treasurer and as a trustee, I take that responsibility quite seriously. ARIN's a not-for-profit organization and its operations are funded by its revenues. ARIN manages a global resource for its service region, and to manage that resource, we need an equitable mechanism, as Dan alluded to ensure revenues are sufficient to sustain the operations of the organization. So with my treasurer hat on, I think that the fee schedule should be revisited to make sure we're able to keep up with the services that the community is requesting from us, as well as making sure that we can manage the operating expenses of the organization. That said, I don't have an opinion on what the outcome of a changed fee structure might look like. That should be done through consultation with the community, and the board could provide oversight for that. Thanks.
Thank you for that response. Our next question is, what is your view on with respect to the role of an RIR with IPv6? Is it to promote adoption of a new protocol, act as a neutral registrar, or something else? And I'll start with Nancy since I see you're already ready.
Sure, thanks, John. So my view is that the role of an RIR in IPv6 is both promoting adoption of a new protocol and acting as a neutral registrar. So from ARIN's perspective, both those activities are within the scope of its mission. ARIN's mission, as you know, is to support the operation of the internet through the management of internet number resources throughout its service region. That's the neutral registrar, and advances the internet through informational outreach. So that's promoting adoption of IPv6. So to the extent that we can provide content through benefits and advantages of migrating to V6 in a passive and educational way, while staying true to its mission and without turning itself into an advocate, an RIR should do so.
Okay. Tina, same question. What is your view with respect to the role of an RIR in IPv6? Is it to promote adoption of a new protocol, act as a neutral registrar, or something else?
I think awareness of V6 is significant in the world. At this point, we need to work to lower barriers, increase adoption, whether that's fees, education, training, availability, all of those things, and working with partner organizations in our ecosystems, other RIRs to share training materials, other NOGs, whatnot. You know, everything doesn't have to be created by ARIN by scratch, but it should be made available to their members. And I think we need to work on that.
Okay. Same question to you, Dan. What is your view with respect to the role of an RIR in IPv6? Is it to promote adoption of a new protocol, act as a neutral registrar, or something else?
I think it's all of them, probably, and more. I've worked with one of the largest ISPs out there to not only promote V6, but to get it deployed, to work with vendors, to develop, the capabilities and to drive real usage. Some cases V4 is actually has been shut off and V6 only is fully functional. So as a member, continue to push that to help people understand the advantages. The RIR takes all of our successes and promotes those advantages through information and education. But the RIR also has to act as a neutral register because it's not up to the RIR to mandate how the members should allocate capital and operate their network. And it's up to the members to determine the approach that best works for their individual needs and on what timelines. But the RIR should also make V6 effortless to obtain and should always be reviewing their policies and fee schedules that create any resistance, and they would want to eliminate that to make the members obtaining V6 resources effortless.
Got it. Very good. I'm going to move on to the next question. Again, these are the questions submitted by the community and then ranked by the community. The next question is, in your view, and I'm going to ask this to Dan since we're already working with you, Dan. In your view, how important is internet industry experience to serving on the ARIN board?
I think it's extremely important, but you also want balance and desire. You wouldn't want a board of all accountants, just like you wouldn't want a board of all engineers. You want a range of expertise and opinions. Each election cycle is different, and you have to look at the makeup of the current board, who's on the slate, and what skill sets would provide the best balance for the board. I think this is where I think my industry experience is important in this cycle, along with my temperament, my success with V6, and my continued desire to do the work.
Very good. Moving back across the panel, Tina, you're next. The question is, in your view, how important is industry experience to serving on the ARIN board?
I agree with Dan in the most part. We can't have everybody be technical or everybody be a special niche. We do need a balance. However, I think I provide technical insight that the average person doesn't have in regards to the transfer market and RPKI. You need people that can bring real world experience to that boardroom when you're making choices. When you don't know how they are actually going to impact your customers, it is good to have somebody with that perspective. For example, when we're trying to push RPKI adoption, we consider it critical, but we're getting pushback from our customers that ARIN's operational stability isn't reliable enough to put critical infrastructure on. The board needs to know that. They need to understand that, and they need to make changes to fix that. And without people with real world experience, you won't have that in that room.
Okay, thank you. On to you, Nancy. The question is, in your view, how important is internet industry experience to serving on the ARIN board?
So similarly to Dan and Tina, I think the board and its members should have a reasonable amount of digital literacy. But beyond that, the subject area is just one small part of serving on the board. Board members should understand governance and bring diversity of thought, experience, backgrounds, and skills to the board. Diverse boards are effective boards. So internet industry experience is a really broad term. It's an interesting term. It could encompass a broad range of experience, which would of course benefit the ARIN board. Some other characteristics that would be important include things like eagerness to participate at every meeting, willingness to prepare ahead for meetings, enthusiastic participation on committees, understanding fiduciary responsibility, ability to think strategically and stay out of the operations of the organization. And then finally, the ability to apply sound business judgment.
Very good. I will now move on, moving into more exciting territory. We're going to move to the next question. And I'll continue at this end of the panel. I'll continue with you, Nancy. Nancy, do you believe that term limits should apply to ARIN trustees?
Yes, I do. I believe that term limits are important and they should apply to ARIN trustees. Term limits enable the organization to continue to grow and evolve by adding new skills and new ideas to the board at regular intervals, and I think that's important. Term limits should be structured, though, and appropriately implemented and managed to ensure continuity of trustees and to make sure that we don't, for instance, see a significant brain drain in any particular year. An important responsibility that we have as trustees is to ensure that we have developed effective board succession plans to manage orderly succession for positions such as chair, vice chair, and treasurer. And balancing that continuity and evolution, it needs to be carefully managed. And one way to do that is through the use of term limits.
Excellent. Moving back up the panel, Tina, the question is to you. Do you believe in that term limits should apply to the ARIN trustees?
I do. I've had this conversation with many of the members of our community, I should say. I support term limits. It's been an ongoing conversation in our community for years. There's been resistance. But I believe, for continuity of knowledge, if we set a term limit for 3 years or 3 terms, say, so the 9-year term, so you're asking somebody to take 1 year off every decade. I think that's a reasonable amount, and it wouldn't affect very many of our board members, but we do need that mechanism to refresh the board, allow for new faces, new ideas, and prevent stagnation.
Very good. At the far end of the panel, we're back to you, Dan. Dan, the question is, do you believe that term limits should apply to ARIN trustees?
I think a hard limit I would object to. If it was you serve X number of terms or X number of years and you're done, I think that it takes away from this community a lot of experience out there that could serve, very well. But like Tina mentioned, I'm fine with a rotation aspect. If a board member served X number of terms, Tina mentioned 3 terms. I'm even fine with 2 terms, where you have to at least stand down for a year take some time off, recharge, stir up the election cycle, and let somebody else step into that role. But I also do think, as Nancy mentioned about the succession planning and the development, I think we've already put some good pieces in place around the board, making it more clear to the community what they're looking for in board members for each election. And there's also, the new candidate development programs that ARIN's put in place to help new prospects, understand what's involved in the role and how to get involved with the election. I think those are great steps towards getting a more diverse board as well.
Very good. Okay, I think we've done a good job with the ARIN Board of Trustees question. We've got one more question for each of the candidates. I'm going to mix up the order a little. So we're going to start this one off with Tina, picking from the middle of the panel. The question is, how active in non-technical internet governance matters do you think ARIN should be? Tina.
Yeah, this is kind of a difficult one because it's rather vague. So I believe that our participation should be limited by the scope of the ARIN mission. But if it does relate to the ARIN mission and it makes sense, we should participate. However, we should be cognizant of the funds spent and whether it truly aligns with what we're doing. It's fine for the org to be involved as long as the goals of that group and what it serves to our members make sense.
Okay, very good. Moving on to Dan. Dan, how active in non-technical internet governance matters do you think ARIN should be?
I was just glancing at the text, the chats, and some people are saying how vague this is. I just clarify how I read this is the non-registry, who is support transfers aspect of ARIN. And I think there's definitely a value to ARIN being in that non-technical governance side of things, because having ARIN being involved in the government discussions helps prevent unintended consequences being imposed on the members. Having all the members be able to leverage kind of the trade association aspect of the RIR is a huge benefit. I think ARIN's government affairs and their law enforcement outreach efforts are critical to its mission to advance the internet and support its members.
Okay, very good. And now our last panelist, last question, Nancy. How active do you think non-technical internet governance how active in non-technical internet governance matters do you think ARIN should be?
Thanks, John. So I may have interpreted this question a little bit differently. I think the interesting word in this question is the word active. So should ARIN be aware of non-technical internet matters? Absolutely, yes.
Got it. Okay.
No, I'm not done.
Oh, keep going.
Yeah, not done, sorry. And if there are areas that ARIN should be active in, like policies around internet numbers, they should be active. So ARIN has a role to play in the governance of the internet, and we cannot do that in a vacuum. So as a board member, it's important for us to know that ARIN is paying attention to matters that relate to our core mission. And where it has no direct responsibility, ARIN should simply be monitoring. But as board members, we rely on the organization, keeping an eye on the environment and ecosystem that we operate within.
Got it.
Thanks.
Okay, I'd like to now take a moment to thank all of our panelists, our Board of Trustees candidates. That ends our questions. We're actually well ahead of time.